Welcome to my session from the field How to Build a Secure Script with the Microsoft Graph API. First of all, of course, big thank you to all the sponsors that made this conference possible, to all the speakers, and of course to all of you, the attendees, that you're here supporting us. First of all, who am I? My name is Andreas. I'm from Germany. In 2002, I started with Lotus Notes development, and yes, it still exists. It's not dead, as many people say. I still have projects in this topic, and since Exchange 2007, I'm PowerShell addicted. That is fact. Since 2013, roundabout, I do only projects in the Microsoft Cloud. Microsoft 365 from A to Z, Identity, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, whatever you can think about. I'm not such a hardcore or full-time scripter like other speakers. I'm more the problem solver. Basically, I'm a consultant. But I use PowerShell for my problem solving each day, which I have at my projects. And of course, as you can see from the session, Graph is a very important thing about this. Today here, this is my first in-person conference where I speak to real people. So please forgive me if my language is changing to Chinese or Mandarin because I'm nervous like hell, like you can imagine. Please forgive me. If you want to connect with me, feel free to scan the QR code. You also get the slides after the session. Who of you already wrote PowerShell scripts or whatever application that queries the Graph API? Cool. Who doesn't? Okay. Who does not know what the Graph API is? Okay, good. So we need to start with the very basics, but I keep them short. The Graph API in general is the new big comprehensive API for all your data in the Microsoft Cloud. Graph API explained in one sentence. It's there for scripting with PowerShell or for also hardcore developers with Java, C# or whatever language you can imagine. It's open for everything. You do not have to install frameworks with that. That is the cool thing about it. How does it work? It is a completely REST-based API provided by Microsoft. And if you want to query data, what do you have to do? You call a URL. It looks like you would query a website. That's it, basically. What you have to add to your query is, what do you want to do? I want to get some data, I want to update some data, I want to delete some data. These are keywords which you have to provide, and a body with your content. If you're new to that topic and want to play around a little bit or get familiar to these URLs, to these verbs, get, post, patch, put, etc., there is something called Graph Explorer. It's this website. The URL is not very really good to read. developer.microsoft.com/enus/graph/graph explorer. Sign in with your Azure Id account, and then you see here you have some examples provided by Microsoft. Click on them and watch the URL here change magically. And then you get a first impression on how does this thing work. Of course, do this in your demo environment, please. Not the first steps in production. Important is you need to authenticate. Also in the Graph Explorer, you need to sign in. That is very important, and this is something we will talk about the next 20 minutes. The Graph API, of course, has a permission model. How does this work? The permission model is able to grant, to give you the possibility to build an app that your users can use. This is called delegated. You can write an app in PowerShell and C# or whatever, provide this app to your user clicks a button, and he authenticates over the graph at Microsoft 365. That is called delegated permission. And there are application permissions. In an on-prem world, you would call this scheduled task with a system account. You can run this as a daemon unattended. That is application permission. Each permission has a name like that. Which resource are we talking about? What do we want to do? And scope constraint. For example, directory.read.all. What does this do? We can read the Azure Active Directory. Woohoo! The same, read, write. We can read and write. Easy to understand, right? Good. As I said, you can run these as a user, or you can run this like a Linux daemon or system account without a signed-in user. If you want to run an app without a signed-in user, and that is what we talk about today, you need an Azure Id App Registration. That is very important. Without that, it's not possible to run a script unattended. That's it. There are some things which you always must think about when developing it, or involve the right people. Who must access the data? Who may access it? Do I have to develop it as a background job or as a user sign-in required? How can the access be maintained? This is just a small hint beside. You need governance processes. This is what I want to say with that. Which resources do I have to access? So do I need access to Azure Active Directory, to SharePoint, to Exchange Online, to Teams, to Planner, whatever? Of course, this must be clear. And which kind of permissions? Read, write. You must clarify this. I have a very, very easy use case or a very easy example which I had in one of my projects. They told me our service desk needs a comprehensive list of all our users. In general, everybody would answer, yeah, give them access to the Azure AD portal, that's it. But they said, no, we need this in a SharePoint list. This is a very easy example for a graph script, and I will give you the complete script at the end of the session. And you will see it's really very easy. For this use case, what does it mean? We need the Azure AD Group Service Desk that needs access maybe to this script, but if we think about, no, it's better to run this unattended. They do not need to sign in, click a button or whatever. Let's do this as an unattended script, but then we need to authenticate a secure way. I will show you how. We need access to Azure AD and SharePoint. I think this needs no further explanation. And we need to search for permissions to read Azure AD users, and we need a permission to write something to a whatever SharePoint list. So, not so much slides. I said we need an Azure AD App Registration. That is where everything starts. So we go to Azure Active Directory. I've prepared this before because sometimes, whoa, we have
bad resolution.
Yeah, bad resolution. Yeah, let's do it like this. Wow, let me try if Zoom it works. Yeah, Zoom it is good. Yeah, that's also good. I've prepared this before the session because sometimes we have a little bit time to wait. For example, 1 or 2 minutes, and we don't have this time now. I have created this app. This via PowerShell. I will show you in 2 minutes how it works, and this via GUI. How can I create an app with PowerShell? It's easy. Really, really easy. It's a one-liner if you want. You have 2 options to do this. In my example here, I did this with the module Azure AD. What is important to know, Azure AD will be deprecated in the next months, approximately beginning of next year. If you do it with that way, you have a command that is called new Azure AD application. Simple. Provide all the stuff which you need, the name, homepage URL, reply URL. This is depending on your app, what you're planning to do with it. Maybe it needs a kind of reply URL because it forwards or redirects the user after sign into an own portal which you have at your environment. These are optional, not mandatory. Yeah, and then you just do new Azure AD application. And what will be the result? You have this app. So this is the first step. Okay, good. Now, the next thing that you do is to look what kind of permissions do I need. And the permissions are always configured here under API permissions. So, and if you go into there, first of all, you see a screen, which permissions does this app already have? As I said, I already prepared that. Directory read all, mail read write will be important for my session on Thursday, and sites read write all is for writing anything to SharePoint. If you want to assign new permissions, here the button, typical Azure portal, add permission. And then here, the first one, the big one, it's really prominent. You cannot oversee it, is Microsoft Graph. And what you see here is what I told you just 5 minutes ago, delegated permissions or application permissions. Here is now where you control what or how will the app behave with a sign-in. Will it prompt my user to sign in with his credentials, or will it be able to sign in unattended? In our case, we have application permissions, and all we have to do now here is search what we need. For example, mail read write, sites read write, whatever. Now a very bad pitfall, which I already saw at some projects, which I want to show you. There are some roles that are really dangerous if you do not handle them correct. If you have a close look here, there's a role called app role assignment.read-write-all, and there is one, well, where is it? Here. Role management read-write directory. With these permissions, an unattended script would be able to grant any permission to any identity in your tenant. And this is extremely important to know. Why? If your tenant gets compromised and the attacker gains access to your app, he is able to grant himself permissions. It's not only to identities, users, also service principals, managed identities. And the worst thing about that, even if you have privileged identity management in place, you will get no notification about that. So, my tip, avoid these permissions as good as you can. Of course, there are use cases where you need them. If that is the place, monitor that. You can monitor the assignments via PowerShell. You can monitor the assignments via log analytics, via another theme, whatever you have in place. That is possible, but monitor it. Otherwise, you are blind, and in the worst case, you lose your tenant and all your data. And this is not a really nice scenario. So, okay, we have our permissions. And now, let us say we have an app where our user wants have to sign in. So we switch to the context. It would be nice to have this app in conditional access, right? If you create such an app via GUI, it works. Just believe me. If you do it via PowerShell, I sometimes see that the app does not automatically appear in as an enterprise app. Here's the solution. With this command, and there is also the same command or the new version in the PowerShell SDK, with this command you can bring any app registration to enterprise app, and with that to conditional access.
Just maybe a really quick question.
Yeah.
If it's applicable, what's the difference between the application and the enterprise application?
Really good question. Yeah.
Otherwise, we can take it afterwards. But
I would take this afterwards, yeah. Or maybe for an offline talk today in the evening, because this is a science. It's all about identities. Just for now, this is the service principle which you can cover with conditional access. So, the cool thing now, when you have it in the enterprise applications, you can go to your app directly. You see here, I'm in the enterprise applications. I open my app, and here, directly in the app, we have this menu, conditional access. And now Microsoft has done something really, really nice, which I personally like. I create a new policy. And if you look into cloud apps, this is already pre-filled with our app. This is nice. Saves some time. 2 seconds, it's good. Time enough to get a small coffee. But this way, you can secure your app with conditional access. I think I have been asked this question a million times. That's the solution. If the enterprise app does not come up, go there with PowerShell. Issue this command, or if you do not have Azure AD module or Azure AD Preview deployed, install the PowerShell SDK and use that one. Works the same way. Cool. Now we nearly have a running app, or the basis for a running app. We are opening our door that we can enter our data and access our data. Let's go back to my app registrations. One thing is missing. I've talked about certificates and secrets. Yeah, of course. So, first of all, just in case that I forget it to say in 2 minutes, what we will need for our sign-in is here the directory ID and the app ID, where I am too small to point to it. These are important. This is data you should copy, write down anywhere, because you will need it for the sign-in. And now here under certificates and secrets, you have the possibility to create these secrets, passwords for the unattended sign-in. You can do it via GUI. Very, very complicated. Click New Secret. Woohoo. You can give this thing a name. This is just free text. Be creative. Enter whatever you want. Was habe ich denn noch nicht? PSConfDemo. And now, also important, and this or must stick or attach to your compliance regulations, security regulations, whatever you have, how long will the secret be valid? That means, for example, I hope I can zoom that. Yeah. You can choose here 3 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, or custom. The maximum possible is 2 years. Similar to certificate. Maybe you know that. After that time has gone, your client secret will no more work. Your app will be no more able to sign in. So, mark your calendar, please. This is something that is very commonly forgotten. Was the same with certificates, is the same here with client secrets. So, I just choose 12 months. Say OK. And now, you see here, my app has got a secret. This is my free text, which I entered. I see how long is it valid, and now, also important, I need to copy that string now. If I generate it now and say, yeah, okay, I come back next week and will copy it then, this will not work. Once I leave this GUI, the secret is no more accessible. So copy it now and enter it into your password manager, whatever it is, KeyPass, OnePassword, Key Vault, whatever. After that, if you did not copy that, you have to delete it and create a new one. If you do not want to work with secrets, you can also work with certificates. It's also possible. If you have your own certificates, for example, code signing certificate or whatever, you can upload your public key here. That is possible, and then you do not authenticate with a secret, then you authenticate with certificate. By the way, the Exchange Online PowerShell module version 2, XOV2, supports exactly the same. It's doing exactly that. All this can, of course, also be done with PowerShell. You will not believe how easy that is. Creating a client secret, you see again a one-liner. What you need is the ID of your app for which you want to create the secret, and then new Azure ID application password credential. Yeah, that command is quite long, but after that you supply the object ID. Important, the object ID of your app, not the app ID. It must be the object ID in this command. This is important to know. And then you provide the same data like in the GUI, the description you would like, and the time span of when or how long will my secret be valid. That's it. If you issue that command, you will get your password, your client secret into your variable. The same process, store it in your password manager. Certificates is a little bit more complicated, but only a little bit. In general, works the same. Here in this case, I create a self-signed certificate. It works with PFX, it works with SER files. Of course, you will get all these scripts later after the conference. And what I do here, I create them, I export them, and then new Azure ID application key credential. That is the command. Or, again, PowerShell SDK, there's also a new version available for that. Cool. So now we can skip a lot of slides, which I just did for case that the demo doesn't work. Yeah, here we are. What do we have now? We have a new app registration in our Azure Active Directory. We can control this app via conditional access. That is a great security win. We have limited the permissions of our app. I called it golden ticket because, yeah, sometimes I like to be a little drama queen. This is dangerous, so do not do this. That's why I call these dangerous permissions golden ticket. And our app can authenticate via a client secret or via certificate. So first great security wins. So, and now our security officer comes and says, wait, these roles, directory read write all, okay. Read all users, okay, I can live with that. Mail read write for all, sites read write all. This sounds like they give you permission to all mailboxes, to all SharePoint sites in your tenant, and yes, that is true. So the next question will be, how can I limit that? So now we talk about scoping. I don't know if Microsoft just communicated this not so brilliant, but many people do not know that these tools exist. It's really easy to scope a graph script, a graph application to a certain number of mailboxes. All you have to do, Google or Bing for application access policy. Then you find everything you need. What you have to do as an admin, create a security group. That is not so difficult. Into that security group, you add all the users your script, your application needs access to. And once you have done that, we go back to PowerShell because we are cool. We say in the Exchange Online PowerShell, this must be done by an administrator, new application access policy for which app, for which user. And we have scoped our app. This way we can, for example, prevent, let us say you have an app that is intended for the salespeople and it must be avoided in any cases that this app can access a mailbox of member of the supervisory board, that this could happen. That is the solution. We have scoped our app.
Quick question?
Yeah?
So you're targeting a user, but it says policy scope group.
No, that is the name of targeted users of my group.
Ah, sorry, yes.
Yeah, all fine. If the questions stay easy like that, then I'm happy. Good to know about scoping in Exchange Online. It is possible to create approximately 300 policies. I've put you in a screenshot from the official documentation. Microsoft says if you do not use the description of these policies, you can create up to approximately 300 policies. So just enter a dot and that's it. Yeah, okay. You can, or from the wording, you have deny and you have restrict. Restrict means, with other words, you allow access. Deny is deny. If you have multiple policies for an app that count, and there is one that ends up in deny, this wins over all other policies. Deny always wins. Yeah, now let's go to SharePoint. In SharePoint, we have for SharePoint, we have a permission that is called sites.selected. Sounds cool. This sounds on the first side like, now, after I click this and say add permission, Azure AD will ask me which site do you want to scope your permission to, but, oops, nope. That is not the case. Scoping in SharePoint is a little bit different, but I show you how it works. You need 2 apps to scope. The first app is the app you are developing for your users, or here for our use case that writes the user data into the SharePoint list later on. And you need some kind of admin app that has really these global permissions. And this app will be used to grant our worker app the permissions that it should really have. Could everybody follow me? Yeah, good. How does it work? You can also, by the way, do this with Postman, or if you have another favorite tool that is not PowerShell, which I hope is not true. So, in a script that does that, you define the site where you want to scope the permissions for a certain app. And as you see, in general, it's the same. Like with our app, I define app ID for my worker app, I provide the app ID for my admin app, and again here for simplicity reasons, the secret, of course, again, never paste or hard code a secret to any kind of code. Please do this with your password manager. I personally prefer Azure Key Vault, but if you have KeePass or whatever, and can query this is fine as well. But never do this to a productive script. This is here only for demo and for simplicity reasons. Yeah, and what you do now, just scroll down a little bit. Yeah. What we do first, this is a function, my personal function to get a graph token, this OAuth2 token at my tenant with the admin app. You see it? Yeah, I'm too small to show it, but here, now. We authenticate with our admin app at our tenant. Yeah. And then we need to build our graph string, because you remember I told you graph is a REST API, and what you do is query a web URL. We need to build that, and now the most important part, we have a body to provide. And this body will tell the graph call what to do. Here you see we have roles. We want our app to be able to write something to our SharePoint list. That means our role, which we need here, is write. Another role that works really fine is read. The documentation also says there is a role called owner. Until today I was not able to assign this. Maybe I'm just too stupid, I don't know. Read and write works fine. Owner, I haven't got it up and running until today. Nevertheless, write works is enough for today for our use case, and then we say to which identity do we want to grant this permission. And we say it's an application, and here we provide the ID of our worker app, which will access the SharePoint site. And then we can give it a display name. This is random. The last thing we do is fire that against the Microsoft Graph. That URL is standard, extended with the site ID of our SharePoint site, and then invoke REST method. We post because we changed something, not get, post on this URL with our authentication, with our body, and content type. We have to provide that the graph knows what is coming in. That is scoping in SharePoint Online. Yeah, really good in time if I look to the timer. So, a small summary before I show you the final script of the use case. Avoid these 2 roles whenever possible, please. You do not want to have the discussion, why did this app have these permissions and now we lost our tenant, now we are compromised. You do not want that. If you need them for an automated permission app, monitor it, please. What I did not tell you about yet, there are 2 versions of the graph, version 1 and beta. Beta, please, only in a lab environment, never in production. Why? V1 is GA, fully supported by Microsoft. Beta is not. Beta can change any time, any day, any second, and your script will stop working. That is in production not so great. As I said before, you need governance processes, life cycles for apps. Apps that are no more needed, that have permissions, are a security hole today. You need to delete them or disable them. The same for secrets and certificates. And believe me, that is the point that is in 99.99% forgotten. Yeah, and if you say, we do not need this anymore, delete it. You don't need it anymore. If you need it again 1 year later, you can recreate it. It's not this big work. It's 5 minutes, and it's done. Okay, before I show you the final script, what you learned today, or now in the last nearly 30 minutes, graph development is really extremely powerful. You have a lot of things which you can do, mostly, of course, related to user data. This is not a full replacement for admin tasks. But if you do something which you do not have really good knowledge about, you can create real security holes in your tenant. That's why I did this session. I wanted to show you how to avoid that. With these basics, which I showed you, you have really a great security baseline. Also important, the graph is continuously evolving. Nearly every month there are new API calls, change API calls. Read the documentation from Microsoft, read the feeds, read the tech community articles to keep up to date with it. And I think this was my last slide. Yes, now I show you the final script for my use case, which I talked about. And then we have it. It's easy. We have our app, we have our tenant ID, we have the secret, and what I added as preparation to lose not so much time. As you know, each site, each user, everything has an ID in the background. The same with the site. I looked up this the ID of my SharePoint site before when preparing the session. Yeah, and what I do now in my script, you remember, we want all Azure AD users in a SharePoint list, which we provide in our tenant. First of all, graph.microsoft.com v1 users. With this query, I get all my users in my Azure AD tenant. After that, invoke REST method to get the result. And then, normal PowerShell, which everybody of you can do while sleeping for each user in allUsers.value. AllUsers.value is important because you get a JSON object back, and .value contains the data which is interesting for you. What you have to know now, how do I have to format my body that SharePoint understands it? And that's it. You provide the title column, the first name column, the user principal name column, and in my use case, in my example, I just chose preferred language, that you believe me, it works with any field. You see here exactly these columns, which I provided in my body. And now let's do some magic, and then I am open for your questions. Just to clear. And this is just because the errors have been because I've multiple times declarated these variables. I did not clear the session, and you see something is happening. If something is happening and there are no errors, this is always good. We know this from many years of PowerShell development. Yeah, and now we have our SharePoint list filled with our Azure AD users. All queries via Microsoft Graph. And you see, these are overall with beautiful scripting, 100 lines of code with comments, with functions, and this is not much. Yeah, my clock says we have 10 minutes left. That's it. Questions? Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you expand the authorization token?
Oh, so yeah, of course. Klar.
Because I played with it and I always get a token, but on the invoke REST method I always get 404. Not authorized.
Okay. Okay, so it's hard to troubleshoot that now with you. So in general, what I do to get this token, to be honest, this was my biggest problem at the beginning when I started with Graph, get a valid token. I think I needed 2 months to get my first valid token, and then I was so happy, yeah. Tenant ID, client ID, app ID. This is what we've seen 100 times now. And then I query the Azure AD authority and say, give me my OAuth 2 token. And then I just write it into this variable. This function is inspired. I saw this one day by an MVP, Tony Pohl, and I copied some things from him. This was my road to success to get a token. If you are not sure if your token is valid, let me show you something. What you should get is a bearer token, and a bearer token looks like that. So letters, numbers, symbols, whatever. If you are not sure if your token has the right permissions, copy that and go to a site called jwt.ms. This URL is your best friend. This is hosted by Microsoft for free. And all you have to do here, paste your token. And if you really copied everything, not like I did now, I missed something. Here. Yeah. This is what we need. Then this site completely decodes your token. You can see where are you authenticated, what is your authentication provider, who issued your token, and where is it? Where is this? Dann bin ich jetzt blind. Which permissions do you have with this token? Here you see it, roles. Are my roles really properly assigned or not? You see here, app display name. How did you authenticate? In this case, I used the app. There we get all the information if your authentication worked properly. So this site also saved my life and a lot of hours of work sometimes. Do not know who was first. I think it was you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any secret cache or place where the token is also stored, not only in the variable? Because I have the problem that I come with a token that is not elevated in the privileged identity management, and then I elevate it, and I don't get the new token.
Inside a PowerShell script?
Yes.
Nothing I would know about. Maybe we can meet later or tomorrow or the next days, and then you can show me this live. Maybe there is something, but inside a PowerShell script, usually no, because you have your variable, there you store your stuff, like with everything else, and then you use it. Maybe if your runtime is not cleared and your maybe you have to issue it again as a refresh token. That could be the case. But this is the only thing that comes into my mind now. If you close Visual Studio or ISE and everything is cleared, you get a new token, or you request a new token. You had a question too? Yeah.
Just something to mention. Performing the task for uploading the files to Sharepoint list, I would prefer to do it in a batch job.
Of course, can do that.
Yeah.
This is a demo tenant with 20 users. There I did not even think about batching, and I wanted to keep it simple. If you have large tenants, of course, batching and paging and everything is true. Yes. Yeah.
During the app registration process, you showed the app permissions only include. Is there a way via PowerShell? Because I tried it.
I think so, yes, but up to the question was, can I assign the permissions via PowerShell too? Because I only did it via GUI. I think there is one, but I haven't found it up to now. Ask me again in 3 weeks, because this is my prio topic at the moment. Yeah.
But there is like thousands of them that didn't manage to figure out which permission and which ID. There is no mapping, no documentation on this. And on one side with delegated permissions, I haven't found an application. I tried to use app permissions, and there are unique ID. The documentation, but there is no mapping between IDs and naming so.
Yeah, the documentation is not always, yeah, it looks a little bit like not yet finished. Yeah, this is right. This is true. Yeah, yeah.
With the application access policy, you can make the group with users. Can you also make groups with maybe devices and the scope on devices as well? Or
I have never tried this. I don't know.
Well, it depends on what kind of group it supports, right?
Security groups.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's a secure group, you can probably put
Mm.
devices in it.
But with the Exchange Online scoping, yeah. What do you win if you enter devices?
Oh, I thought it was also for just for Graph in general. Is it only for Exchange Online?
No, Graph is for nearly every kind of data which you have in Microsoft 365.
But the scoping of the API permissions.
Yeah.
Is it only for Exchange Online?
No. So, okay, that was your question. I know it for SharePoint and I know it for Exchange. I'm searching for such a thing for Teams currently and for Planner. I haven't found it yet. Especially for Planner. For Planner, I help myself with Conditional Access because the application permissions for Planner are not the same like with Delegated Permissions.
They're really bad.
Excuse me?
They're really bad.
Yeah.
The implementation is really bad.
I'm the speaker. I'm not allowed to say that they are bad. That's.
But they are.
Say what you want as a speaker. Say what you want as a speaker.
Okay. Yeah. We have 3 minutes left. Yeah.
You mentioned something about the governance, and you should do the. So how do you do the governance of all the keys and all this and all that stuff?
Calendar entries, or what I am currently developing for my environment, where I provide my managed services for my customers, PowerShell scripts that monitor them each day and notify me 1 week or 2 weeks before when something expires.
Do you also have like a script that shows you all the things that are open, kind of like which permissions are open in the app registration, if I have it correctly, or the price? Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you have a script like that as well that you can run just to give you an overview of all these things?
Not an overview. I have it for these dangerous permissions. I'm monitoring, but I have it in Log Analytics. But very soon, and I plan also to provide it with the session material how to scan exactly for these application permissions, these dangerous ones with PowerShell, not Log Analytics yet.
Thank you very much.
2 minutes left. If not, see you all later at the Prater. Thank you.